What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to give you guys some of my impressions on Skull and Bones. Now, look, this isn't going to be a full-on review because I haven't experienced nearly the full game, but I do think I have some things to say. I'm about 6 or so hours into the game, and it's gotten a little bit better. It's probably going to be more negative than positive, though, but I'm going to give it, its honest shake, and I've been talking about this game since the very first E3 that it was shown. I've had some small hope that maybe it could, achieve something, but it was mainly out of genuine curiosity why I stuck with it this entire time. I just wanted to see what the end product to a game that has been just in, I think you can call it development hell, what does that game kind of turn into? And that was the main kind of driving force behind me getting it, plus me being a massive fan of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's my favorite film franchise, and I love these kind of games. Black Flag, the ship stuff is phenomenal, and I really wanted this game to be good. So before I get any further, I do just want to thank Ubisoft, and I want to give them a lot of respect, and I always try to do this specifically with them. Their games are very up and down. And like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is actually a phenomenal game. I think that's one of their best games they've made in the past, 5 years. Assassin's Creed Mirage was pretty good, but they're very up and down. So I give them a lot of respect for giving out codes to creators big and small and just letting them kind of go off on them, right, if they so choose. But I do appreciate the code for Skull and Bones. And let's just get into it. I want to say, I mentioned right in the very beginning, right? It's getting better. I do think there's hope that there's something good in here. I've seen critics actually not hate this game nearly as much as I thought they would hate this game, right? And I'll be honest, now I haven't watched any review, not a single thing. I did see IGN, I think, gave it a 7. I didn't see why they gave it a 7. I just saw, the number, okay? I think 6 hours in, I'm getting closer to it being a more enjoyable experience. And I feel that when you have upgraded a lot, when you have gotten a really strong ship with some really strong weapons and you're facing some really strong opponents, and if you play with others, this is very important. If you play with other people, I think the game can be fun. But this game has one of the worst openings I've seen in a game, period. It's just not fun. It's boring. And there are plenty of games that start slow, okay? There's a lot of them. And I understand the conflicted feel, with those kind of games. If a game starts slow, well, how long do you give a game? You bought the game. You paid for it. And a game has to try to get you immediately, right? Does the game expect you to go along with it for 10, 15 hours before it picks up? Now, some games I really love actually start kind of slow. But here's the difference. The games that I love that start slow, there's still something there. Maybe the combat, maybe there's some story beats that are really solid. Skull and Bones starts slow, and there's not really any hope that, maybe you can see, okay, well, when I fire a cannon, there's something still kind of fun about that. But that's really it. When you're going around and you are doing fetch quests, that's pretty much the game. You go on land, different lands, you pick up quests, you leave, you go mine materials, you go take out ships, you go loot something, and you come back. Over and over and over and over. You upgrade your ship. You get a new ship. All these different resource kind of places at a camp. That's the game. Now there's bounties, right? So you can take out kind of higher level people, but the game is just so slow to start. And I told this story when I played it live, but I want to tell you it in this review because I think it's important. And maybe it just happened to me, but this really turned me off to the game very early on. So about 20 to 30 minutes into the game, right, you are tasked with taking out level 1 or 2 ships, okay? Very easy ships. But they're in a specific area of the map, okay? So you sail there, and you're supposed to take out 3 of them. Well, when I play it, at least, the AI, they put level 10 pirate ships, not other people playing online. This is AI, right? So I go into a zone to take out level 1 or 2 ships. I'm a level 2, and there are level 10 ships there, and they're hostile. They will fire on sight. They don't wait for you to attack them. So when I'm taking out 1 ship at a time of these little ships, these other massive ships take me out in 1 shot. I sink, and I have to restart. And I quit. I put the controller down and said, I'll play it later. And I did. I came back, right? But now that could have just been me. Maybe that's everybody. I don't know. But why in God's name would you do something like that? I just don't understand why that's the first or second mission quest that you're delivered, that you get. You have to go out and do it. It's one of the very first ones, half an hour in the game. And when that happened to me, I was like, well, how am I supposed to trust that this game is put together? At all? How, you know what I mean? So that was just like an early, kind of view as to what this game is. But I mean, I basically described it. You go around mining things, you go around shooting things. There's places to plunder, like outposts like things, right? You have to take out a couple towers, some ships come. Now, again, that is actually where the game becomes the most fun. When you, and again, like already I am experiencing it. This isn't all bad because as your ship progresses, as you get newer ships, as you get more weapons, and if you're playing with other people, like some of these outpost stuff, I just ran into other people online, just random people, right? And we start this plunder and we're firing on ships together. There is something fun about that. Like that is the core, I think, of what made like Black Flag. There's a couple things that made the sea parts of it really fun, but the idea of just shooting other ships with your ship, for me at least, is always going to be fun, okay? Now, it's a bit more almost RPG-like in this game where the aim is much more important, and, again, there's so many different kinds of cannons, there's so many different kinds of weapons. It's more in-depth. I mean, I actually would say that if there's anything that's more in-depth over Assassin's Creed, it is the literal progression of your ship and the weapons. Like, it does have more once you get there. Now, where I'm at now, I probably couldn't tell the difference between this game and Black Flag, but I imagine 10, 15, 20 hours into this game, you can tell a difference, and this game would have, again, a more fleshed-out combat system. But everything else, though, is really where the game just gets, let down. I've seen clips floating around, and I gotta say this. I gotta agree with it. The visuals. This game, it looks old. It looks very, very, and it's disappointing because they kind of do it to themselves, right? When they call this a quadruple A game, which I don't even know what that means. At this point, I don't know what that means, but it is not. It's absolutely not. If quadruple A means that you buy the game for $70 and then there's just so many opportunities to buy with your own money, there's a lot of customization in this game. Okay, number one, a lot of customization. There's customization you can earn with like the in-game currency, but let me tell you, there's plenty of opportunity to use your own money. I looked at the store in terms of like buying, I think gold it is. There's a lot of opportunities to spend your own money on top of buying it, okay? So is that why it's quadruple A? Because it's $70 and then you also can pay extra. Is this game worth $70? Is this game worth that price? No, it absolutely is not, because ultimately it feels bare bones. The times where it's at its most fun, you need to have other people. I really believe that. I don't think it's all that much fun to sail around by yourself. And let me tell you, by the way, early on in this game, when you have ships that don't really sail very fast and you have to get from like a pretty good distance, from one place to the next, I mean, I was like listening to podcasts on YouTube, because I was like, what am I supposed to do? They'll sing and you might run into a ship you can sink along the way, but there's a lot of boredom, at least again in the opening. Now, maybe like 10, 15 hours in, but at what cost? What's the cost for that? And even when you get that far, I would assume the most fun is sinking ships, but the game is not even entirely that, right? You have to get off, you have to go to the island, and those parts are, I don't know if I would say borderline terrible, but they're just like meaningless. There's nothing to it, right? You may have seen some of the clips going around of people walking into the water, and I actually did this. I did this the first night. I said, because I always grade water, right, in these games, and by the way, the water in this game, not good. For a game that's almost entirely in water, this is not a strong water. Like Avatar, Frontiers, Pandora, amazing water. Horizon Forbidden West, amazing, right? These are games with top tier water. And I know more than most, okay? In terms of the water, it's the first thing I look at. This game, the waves, not impressive. The waves, when you're on the ship, are not impressive. In fact, there was maybe one time where it kind of got choppy, like the water got choppy. I think back to Black Flag. I think to when it would get nuts and the waves were gigantic and it'd be a storm. It'd be a literal storm. That was my favorite part. Literally, that was my favorite part of Black Flag, is when the seas would get outrageous and you're fighting and it's pouring and it's dark and there's lightning. Now, there is lightning here, but it's just, I don't know. Why am I even comparing it? And I'm saying this, I would say, as a negative, right? Why are we even comparing this to Black Flag? Well, of course, there's like the obvious reasons, but I guess like what I'm trying to say, why do we have to compare it to a game that's 10 plus years? You know what I mean? The fact that we do have to compare it already is kind of a problem, because this game should automatically, just from it being 10 years older, or I guess newer, right? it should automatically be leagues better. But that's not really the world we live in, right? Old games stand up better than most think. And, I've made a third channel. I've played a lot of old games just in the last year. I played Black Flag, I think, actually last year, and I played it from beginning to end. Old games have a lot of value, and I think people kind of get caught up in the newer stuff, and that's fine. But I think it's cool to go back and kind of reflect on what was, right? And I mean, but that is maybe this game's biggest weakness. When you're going and the water, you don't swim when you're a person, right? You walk into the water and the waves don't make any impact on you. And then it's like, okay, well, it's the walking around parts. Like they didn't put much effort into it and maybe purposely, right? What about on the ship? Honestly, I think maybe the wind is the best part of like mechanics or like kind of physics of that nature, right? Like the wind direction matters, and you only have a certain amount where you could go at like the top speed, right? So there's a bit of in fact, there's more strategy with wind and direction than anything else in this game. I'd honestly argue, right? In terms of ship fights, like, I guess there's a little strategy. You want to be able to pivot, left and right when you need to, and you want to make sure, you got guns that can maybe reload fast, so on. But for the most part, wind is the most, attractive feature, and the waves even there. I mean, honestly, again, I'm going to focus on the water because, number one, I'm a water guy, but number two, you're on water, for 95% of this game, and I really don't think they pulled it off all that well. And like I said, I think Black Flag is one of the most, like, glaring issues actually with this game, because just the fact you're comparing it, I think, is already kind of an issue, right, with Skull and Bones. And then the fact that, honestly, Black Flag does a lot of things at least on par. Like, the visuals you can debate. I think some visuals are probably pretty even. And like I said, I would say the mechanics and where the combat can go, I do think is better in Skull and Bones. But I mean, that's it. Honestly, that's it. I think the atmosphere of Assassin's Creed was better. The boarding stuff is a disaster, right? It was something, again, I tried immediately as soon as I got in this game. Those clips that you may have seen online, you throw like harpoons, and if it doesn't make it, you don't even get to board, right? You gotta like land where they grab onto the ship, even though I think it's kind of broken because it doesn't always do it. So you do that. They grab on, and then it's a quick, maybe 6-second animation of your characters pulling the ships together, which would be fine if there was something after that, but it's that, and then you get the loot. That's it. There's obviously, as we knew, right, there's no sword fighting, there's no, like, boarding thing, but, and I said this before, in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, when you would board a ship, you'd fight, whatever they would tell you to fight, and then you'd have a cutscene, and it would be like you can absorb the crew and absorb the loot, or you can sink the ship, right? That cutscene after you've already fought. That cutscene is better than this cutscene, and that is without the fighting part. So it doesn't have the fighting part of Black Flag, but then the cutscene at the end of the fighting part of Black Flag is still actually better than what you get here. So in a lot of ways, it's just a dumbed down and just stripped down version of Black Flag. That's really, and there's a couple parts of this game where it's better in terms of, again, I would say where the combat can go. But again, at what cost? Do you want to sink 10, 15 hours? And that leads me, this is it. Okay, this is the end of the review here. One thing I don't bring up all that much, but I do actually think it can be important is, well, what about like how you spend your money, right? Now, you spend your money however you want, but what I mean by this is, there's a lot of games out right now. There's a lot of games, and there's actually going to be a lot of games still, throughout March and even in April. So, like, is this the game that you want to get? Now, I don't do review scores. I don't give scores on any game that I review on this channel. But what I would just say to you, and honestly, honest opinion, if you're saying, well, Alex, like, should you get it? I wouldn't recommend it, but it really depends on the kind of person and gamer you are. Would I say that this game is better than a Banisher's Ghost of New Eden? No. Would I say this is better than Infinite Wealth? No. Now, these are my personal preferences, but also a thing to remember is they are all different. Infinite Wealth and Banishers, single player, right, versus this. You can look at Helldivers. Even Helldivers is very different than Skull and Bones. The issue is I don't really know who Skull and Bones is for, right? Because if you want like a action-y, multiplayer, like hectic game, Helldivers actually, you know what I mean? Like that is the game right now, at least. Even like pop culture, that is the game. So what is Skull and Bones? Well, Skull and Bones is like if you liked the sea parts, if you liked the ship parts of Black Flag, that's here. And if you have a friend group that is all willing to do this together, and you make it like a pact, like you have to do it, you all have to play together, I think you can have fun. You have to give it a lot of time, But then it's like, okay, well, would you spend $70 here, or would you spend $40 on Helldivers, or would you spend, I think, 60 or 50 or whatever Banishers is, right? Like, it just depends on like what the game is worth to you. Is this game worth 70? It might be, but is it worth 70 over paying money for some other game that's just come out? I don't know. That's up to the player, right? They are all different. I'll definitely give all of these games that. I just don't know, even in the multiplayer realm, who is going to go all in on Skull and Bones, right? If anything, right now, Helldivers is dominating everything. If you're going in for multiplayer with your friends, you've probably already seen Helldivers online. That's probably the game you're going for. I'm not like, they're different. They're very, one's a third-person shooter and one is a ship game, right? Like, they couldn't be more different, actually. But I don't know. I just don't know who would, actively want to jump into this game. But I think there's a little something here. I'm going to keep playing it because I do want to see if it continues to get better. But if the game gets better 10, 15 hours in, then you're asking the question of, do you want to give a game like this 10 to 15 hours to start to get good? And then even when it gets good, how good is it? And I cannot personally answer that question, right? I'm sure there's other people that have maybe played it longer, and that's fine. You watch them. But for me, I just don't know how much more fun it can get, and if it would be worth that journey to get to that point, right? Like, and then does it get excellent at 30 hours? Like, I don't know. I don't think it would, but I don't actually know that, hence why technically this isn't like a full-on review, okay? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.